I'm going to tell you something that most gardening channels won't tell you. Not because it's a secret. It's not a secret, it's just boring. It's not flashy. There's no sexy thumbnail for it. Nobody's going to click on a video about dirt the way they click on a video about a giant pumpkin or a 10-foot tomato plant. But here's the truth, and I've earned the right to say this after 30 years of growing food on this land. The single most important thing you will do all year, the one thing that will determine whether your garden thrives or struggles, whether you're hauling in baskets of produce or staring at sad yellowing plants all summer, happens right now. In spring, before you plant a single seed. It's your soil prep. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how I do it, the way I've refined it over 3 decades of getting it wrong before I got it right. Let me start with a story. When I first started farming this land, back when I was young and didn't know anything, I did what everybody does. I went to the hardware store, I bought a bag of fertilizer, I rented a rototiller, and I went to town on my garden plot. Just chewed it up, ground it to powder. It looked beautiful afterward. Smooth, fluffy, perfect. I was so proud of myself. And then I planted my seeds and watered them and waited. And things grew, sort of. The tomatoes were okay, not great. The peppers were small, the carrots were stubby and forked. Everything was just kind of mediocre. And I didn't understand why, because I'd done everything the book said. Tilled the soil, added fertilizer, watered regularly. So what was wrong? What was wrong was everything. I just didn't know it yet. It took me about 5 years of mediocre harvests before I started really understanding what soil is and what it needs. And once I understood that, once I really got it, everything changed. My yields doubled, then tripled. My plants were healthier. I had fewer pest problems, fewer diseases. The food tasted better. And I was doing less work, not more. That's the part that gets people. Better results with less effort. It sounds like a scam. It's not. It's just good soil. So what is soil? I mean, really, what is it? Most people think of it as just dirt, just brown stuff that holds the plant up, a medium, like the pot that holds a flower. But soil is alive. It's one of the most complex living systems on the planet. A single handful of healthy soil contains more microorganisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, earthworms, insects, all living together in this incredibly intricate web of relationships. The bacteria break down organic matter and release nutrients. The fungi form networks that transport those nutrients to plant roots, sometimes across distances of several feet. The worms tunnel through the soil, creating channels for air and water. Everything is connected. Everything depends on everything else. And when you take a rototiller to that soil, you're tearing that web apart. You're destroying the fungal networks. You're disrupting the bacterial communities. You're collapsing the worm tunnels. You're taking a thriving, functioning ecosystem and turning it into a pile of dead particles. And then you wonder why your plants don't grow well. That's what I was doing for those first 5 years, killing my soil every spring and then trying to compensate with chemical fertilizer. It's like burning down a forest and then hanging birdhouses from the charred stumps and wondering why the birds don't come back. The structure is gone. The life is gone. The fertilizer might provide some nutrients, sure, but it does nothing for the biology, nothing for the structure, nothing for the water retention, nothing for the 1,000 other things that healthy soil does for your plants. So here's what I do now. Here's my spring soil prep, the whole thing, from start to finish. And I want you to notice how simple it is, how little equipment it requires, how little it costs, because the best farming practices aren't complicated or expensive. They're the opposite. Step 1. I wait. That's the first and maybe the most important step. I wait. In early spring, the soil is wet, saturated from snowmelt and rain, and wet soil should not be worked. Period. End of discussion. If you go out there and start digging or forking or stepping on wet soil, you are compacting it. You are squeezing out the air spaces. You are destroying the structure, and compacted soil is one of the hardest things to fix. It can take years to undo the damage of one afternoon of working wet ground. So how do you know when it's ready? Grab a handful, squeeze it into a ball. Now poke that ball with your finger. If it crumbles apart, you're good. The soil is dry enough to work. If it holds its shape like clay, if it feels sticky, if water seeps out of it, walk away. Come back in a week and try again. I don't care if it's a beautiful sunny day and you're dying to get started. Walk away. This is the first test of patience in the farming year, and it's the one that matters most. I usually can't get on my soil until mid to late March, sometimes not until early April, depending on the year. And that's fine. The soil doesn't care about your calendar. It cares about moisture and temperature and biology. Work with it, not against it. Step 2. I assess. Before I do anything to the soil, I look at it. I really look. I get down on my knees and I look at the surface. Is there organic matter visible? Are there worm castings? If I push my finger in, does it go in easily or do I hit resistance? I pull back some of the old mulch from last year and check underneath. Is the soil dark? Does it smell good? Healthy soil has a smell. It smells earthy and sweet and alive. If your soil smells sour or like nothing at all, that's telling you something. It's telling you the biology isn't where it should be. I also check for earthworms. This is my favorite test because it's so simple. I dig a shovelful of soil about 6 inches deep and I count the worms. If I see 10 or more earthworms in that one shovelful, my soil is in great shape. The biology is thriving, the organic matter is being processed, the structure is good. If I see fewer than 5, I know I need to add more organic material and give the soil more time to recover. Worms are the canary in the coal mine. They tell you the truth about your soil when nothing else will. Step 3. I add compost. This is the heart of everything I do. Compost. I spread a 1 to 2 inch layer of finished compost over every bed every single spring. Not fertilizer, not amendments, not fancy products in bags with promises on the label. Just compost. Decomposed organic matter. The stuff that nature has been using to build soil for millions of years before humans came along and decided they knew better. I make my own compost, have for 25 years. It's not complicated. Kitchen scraps, vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, eggshells, fruit cores, yard waste, fallen leaves, grass clippings, pulled weeds that haven't gone to seed. I layer it in a bin, green stuff and brown stuff alternating, keep it moist, turn it when I remember to, and in about 6 months to a year, it turns into this dark, crumbly, sweet-smelling material that is the single best thing you can put on your soil. Period. Nothing else comes close. Not manure, although that's good too. Not peat moss, not vermiculite. Not any of the specialty products that cost $20 a bag. Compost, free, made from stuff you were going to throw away anyway. And it does everything. What does compost do? Let me count the ways. It feeds the soil biology. Those billions of microorganisms I mentioned earlier, they eat the compost, and in the process, release nutrients in forms that plant roots can absorb. It improves soil structure. Heavy clay soil becomes looser and better drained. Sandy soil becomes better at holding moisture. Compost does both things simultaneously, which sounds impossible, but it's true because what it's really doing is building aggregates, little clumps of soil particles held together by fungal threads and bacterial secretions, and these aggregates create the perfect balance of airspace and water retention. Compost also buffers pH, slowly bringing acidic or alkaline soils toward that sweet spot of 6 to 7, where most vegetables thrive. And it suppresses disease. Healthy, biologically active compost contains beneficial microorganisms that outcompete many common plant pathogens. I've seen gardens go from chronic blight and wilt problems to almost disease-free just by building up the soil with compost over a few years. If you don't make your own compost, buy it. Find a local source. Many municipalities sell compost made from yard waste. Some farms sell it. It's usually cheap, $10 to $30 a cubic yard, and a cubic yard goes a long way. You don't need a lot. 1 to 2 inches per year is plenty. More is not better in this case. You're feeding the biology, not burying it. Step 4. I loosen, not till. After the compost is spread, I take a broad fork and gently loosen the soil underneath. A broad fork is a simple tool. It looks like a giant dinner fork with long tines. You push it into the soil, rock it back slightly, pull it out, and move to the next spot. That's it. No turning the soil over, no mixing layers, no destroying structure, just loosening, creating a little airspace, breaking up any surface compaction from winter. The compost stays on top, and the worms will pull it down over the next few weeks. That's their job. Let them do it. I stopped rototilling 12 years ago, and it was the best decision I ever made for my soil. The first year was scary. The soil looked rough, unfinished. Not that smooth, fluffy seedbed I was used to. But I planted anyway, and you know what? Everything grew better. The roots went deeper because they were following worm channels instead of hitting a hardpan created by the tiller. The soil held moisture better because the pore structure was intact. And by the second year, the difference was dramatic. By the third year, I couldn't believe I'd ever tilled. The soil was better in every way, softer, darker, more alive, and all I had to do was stop destroying it. If you've been tilling for years, your soil has a compaction layer underneath, right at the depth where the tiller reaches. It's called a plow pan or a tillage pan. It's a hard layer of compressed soil that roots and water can't penetrate. When you stop tilling, it takes a couple of years for that layer to break down. Worms and root channels gradually open it up. Deep-rooted cover crops help too, which I'll talk about in a minute. Be patient. The transition period is real, but the payoff is enormous. Step 5. I check the pH and adjust if needed. I do this every spring with a simple test kit that costs about $15 at the garden center. It takes 5 minutes. You mix some soil with a solution, compare the color to a chart, and you know where you stand. Most vegetables want a pH between 6.0 and 7.0, slightly acidic to neutral. If my pH is below 6, I add a light dusting of agricultural lime. If it's above 7, I add a little elemental sulfur. And then compost over time tends to buffer everything toward that ideal range on its own. The adjustments get smaller every year as the soil finds its equilibrium. Why does pH matter so much? Because it controls nutrient availability. You could have the most nutrient-rich soil in the world, but if the pH is wrong, the plants can't access those nutrients. They're locked up, chemically bound to soil particles in forms that roots can't absorb. At a pH of 5.0, for example, phosphorus becomes almost completely unavailable, even if there's plenty of it in the soil. Your plants will show phosphorus deficiency symptoms, purple leaves, poor fruiting, even though there's phosphorus right there. The door is locked. Correcting the pH unlocks it. It's one of the simplest, cheapest things you can do, and it has one of the biggest impacts. Step 6. I deal with the mulch situation. Most of my beds still have last year's mulch on them, partially decomposed. I have 2 choices. I can pull it back, add my compost directly to the soil surface, and then put the old mulch back on top. Or, if the old mulch is decomposed enough, I can just leave it in place and add compost on top, and new mulch on top of that. I usually do the first option because I want the compost in contact with the soil surface where the worms can get at it. But either way works. The point is that the beds are never bare. There's always something covering the soil. Bare soil is damaged soil. It crusts over in rain, it bakes in sun, it erodes in wind, it loses moisture. Keep it covered. Always. For new mulch, I use straw. Wheat straw or oat straw. I buy it from a local farmer for about $5 a bale, and one bale covers about 50 square feet at 4 inches deep. I don't use hay because hay is full of weed seeds, and you'll spend all summer pulling grass out of your garden. Straw has very few seeds. Shredded leaves are another great option, and they're free. In the fall, I shred my leaves with the mower and bag them, and by spring they're partially decomposed and ready to use as mulch. Wood chips work too, but I use those mainly for pathways, not directly on veggie beds, because they can temporarily tie up nitrogen as they decompose. Step 7. Cover crops. This is the thing I wish I'd started doing 20 years earlier than I did. Cover crops are crops you plant not to harvest, but to benefit the soil. In the fall, after my summer crops are done, I sow a mix of winter rye and crimson clover on every empty bed. The rye grows through the fall and even a bit in winter, holding the soil in place, preventing erosion, building organic matter with its dense root system. The clover is a legume, which means it pulls nitrogen from the air and fixes it in the soil through a symbiotic relationship with bacteria in its roots. Free nitrogen, manufactured by nature. By spring, these cover crops have added organic matter, fixed nitrogen, prevented erosion, suppressed weeds, and fed the soil biology all winter long while I was sitting by the fire. In spring, about 3 weeks before I want to plant, I cut the cover crops down at the soil surface and lay them flat as a mulch. I don't dig them in, I just cut and drop. The roots decompose underground and the tops decompose on the surface, and it all becomes food for the soil. Then, I add my compost on top, loosen with the broad fork, and plant. The beds that have had cover crops are noticeably better than the ones that didn't. The soil is darker, more worms, better structure. Plants grow faster and produce more. It's the closest thing to magic I've found in 30 years of farming. If you're not ready for cover crops yet, at the very least, never leave your soil bare over winter. Pile on leaves, pile on straw, pile on anything organic. Just don't let the soil sit there naked and exposed for 5 months. It's like leaving your car outside in a blizzard with the windows down. You're asking for damage. Step 8. I feed the soil one more time with a light application of what I call my spring boost. This is not a commercial product. It's something I mix myself. Equal parts fish bone meal, kelp meal, and azomite, which is a rock dust that provides trace minerals. I sprinkle this lightly over the beds after adding compost, about a cup per 10 square feet. The fish bone meal provides slow-release phosphorus for root development and flowering. The kelp meal provides potassium and a huge range of trace minerals and growth hormones that stimulate soil biology. And the azomite fills in any micronutrient gaps. Is this step strictly necessary? No. If your compost is good, you can skip it. But I've found that this little boost, especially in beds where I'm growing heavy feeders like tomatoes and corn and squash, gives the plants a measurable advantage. They're bigger, healthier, more productive. It costs me about $20 to treat my entire garden, and the return on that investment is enormous. Let me talk about something that I think is critical and that most people completely skip. Understanding your specific soil type. Not all soil is the same. I have heavy clay on one end of my property and sandy loam on the other. They require different approaches. Clay soil holds nutrients and moisture well, but drains poorly and compacts easily. Sandy soil drains great, but doesn't hold nutrients or water. Most people don't even know what they have. Here's a simple test. Take a jar, fill it a third of the way with soil from your garden, fill the rest with water, shake it up violently, and then let it sit for 24 hours. The soil will settle into layers. Sand on the bottom, silt in the middle, clay on top. The proportions tell you what you're working with. If it's mostly sand, you need more organic matter more frequently to improve water retention. If it's mostly clay, you need organic matter plus maybe some coarse sand to improve drainage. And if it's a nice mix of all three with a good portion of organic matter, congratulations. You've got loam, and loam is the gold standard. The beautiful thing about all of this, the thing that keeps me going after 3 decades, is that soil gets better every year if you treat it right. Every year I add compost, every year I grow cover crops, every year I mulch, and every year the soil improves, the worm population increases, the water retention gets better. The nutrient availability goes up, the plants get healthier and more productive. It's a compounding investment. Like putting money in the bank and earning interest. The first few years the returns are small, but after a decade of consistent soil building, the returns are spectacular. My beds now produce 2 to 3 times what they did when I started this approach, And I'm spending less on inputs, less time weeding, less time watering, and less time dealing with pests and diseases. The soil does most of the work. I just have to not screw it up. And that's really the core philosophy. The one thing that changes everything. Stop trying to feed the plant. Start feeding the soil. The soil will feed the plant better than you ever could. The soil knows what the plant needs. It's been doing this for 4 billion years. Trust it. Add organic matter. Keep it covered. Keep it alive. Don't destroy it with tillage and chemicals. And then stand back and watch what happens. What happens is abundance. Real, honest, dirt under your fingernails abundance. The kind that fills your table and feeds your family and makes you wonder why you ever made it so complicated. That's my spring soil prep. Compost, loosen, check, pH, mulch, cover crop residue, a little mineral boost, and a whole lot of respect for the ground under your feet. It's not sexy. It won't get a million views. But it's the foundation of everything good that happens in a garden. Everything. You get this right, and the rest of the season takes care of itself. You get this wrong, and no amount of fancy seeds or expensive fertilizer or clever tricks will save you. Go take care of your soil. It's the only thing standing between you and the best harvest of your life.